G'day, welcome to Mark and Sam After Work. Today I've got an update on the firearm situation, or the legal ownership of firearms in Western Australia at the moment. We not that long ago went through a firearms ban, or a firearms confiscation, buyback, whatever you want to call it, on some high power calibers, some ones that were deemed to be too powerful for individuals to own, because they might be able to pierce body armour on the police body armour, which was a peculiar situation, it always was, and I'll go through and explain that a little bit more. But that was just some calibers, or some cartridges, some chamberings that were banned. That was something that pushed through. It was brought in by the police minister and the police minister, police commissioner, all put this through, and it actually became an act in Parliament. It became regulations that were then adopted, and on the 1st of July this year that had to happen. And for those that say, listen, you know, people should have not complied, all that sort of stuff, in a country, in a state where firearms are regulated, registered, controlled very much so, any of that sort of stuff would mean very serious stuff for the individual. So it wasn't something that could simply be ignored in any shape, form, fashion. It's something that had to be addressed. There were various ways of addressing that, from people that did hand stuff in to people that got paid for it. There was reasonable money sent back for it, given back for it. Some people just handed firearms in, some people sold firearms to different places, some people took those barrels out and rechambered the rifle into something that was acceptable, something that was approved. We had to, me and Sam, Mark and Sam After Work, we had to get rid of some barrels. We had to get rid of, and that's all. I destroyed them myself. So chopped them off, but also had to hand them into the police. That was something that the police needed to make happen for that process. Not a great situation, not something that is a nice feeling to have to go through that process, but that was to be able to have any firearms at all. That was the process we had to get to. So not ideal. The bit that was, I suppose, that the relevant point of that point of conversation then was all those who are sort of paying attention realised that the guise of was a caliber ban for a particular caliber, because it was an issue with, it was body armour and that sort of stuff. Listen, a funny thing to talk about in its real sense, because it's not, there's no war on, it's not something that's, you know, it's not something that law-abiding citizens take part in, it's not a real thing in any shape, form or fashion. But that's because it is just a guise. There is a real agenda, and there isn't any question to that. There is a real agenda in some parts of our government, in some parts of world government, to disarm the population. So to end up where the only arms are either in the hands of the ruling class, so the enforcers, whatever it is, that's where the firearms are, and the civilians do not have arms, unless of course the criminals who don't follow the rules, and then all bets are off. So the real agenda is to get rid of the firearms out of the population, out of the normal civilian population, under the guise of public safety. Lots of things happening under the guise of public safety, or whether it's climate change or whatever that agenda is. There's lots of things where more and more so our free, great Western democracy of a very free country to live in, and lots of nice things, is more and more becoming more and more controlled, more and more authoritarian, and it's something that's of a real concern. And I'll get back into that in a minute. The big thing that I suppose I can tell you at the moment, well, a couple of things. One is we are trucking along happily doing what we're doing. We're licensed firearms owners. I'm also a gunsmith and a manufacturer and things like that. So there's lots of different bits and pieces that I can get to do what we do legally on our channel. So we're not too hampered by this at all. Doesn't mean that any of this stuff is great or any of this stuff we agree with, but it means we're not too hampered at this stage. The other side of things is I'm not that connected with what's going on in the firearms community, more than on my channel, working as hard as we do. We do keep in contact a little bit. We have the local shooting club we go to with our handguns and that side of things. And there's community alliance that's been started, Firearms Community Alliance that's been started, which is part of the sort of the political nature of the West Australian firearm community, talking to the police and getting together a bunch of people from different sections in our community to be able to have a say with the police. Not sure how much that's working, they're trying, but I suppose fast forward to what's just happened a week ago. We've sort of known it's been coming for a little while, but there is, I suppose, a couple of things. One is there's a call to rewrite the regulations. They are from 1974, and they anyone would say that yes, there is some grey areas, there's some loopholes, there's some problems with the regulation from both sides of the fence. If you're trying to get more and more restrictions, then okay, they want to change them. But if you want the regulations to make sense and work for the firearms community, they also could do with some adjusting as well. Although there is always the fear we have, particularly in Australia and particularly in Western Australia, that every time there's another rule, it's going to be more restrictive. But I suppose, you know, you can maybe something that will change at some stage, rather. I don't know, that positive thinking. But yes, they could do with some fixing. There's some bits and pieces that could change there. So we know that's coming, but we've just been hit with a release of a consultation paper, which there's a little concern there as to consultation. This is basically released from the police minister. But it's been written by the police department to the largest degree. Supposedly there's been some consultation in there, except for all the groups that were supposed to be consulted seem to have, this is a very different thing than what we're expecting. It's also been released to be able to be tabled, and I'm not exactly sure of the process, but to be put towards Parliament so it can then start to be written properly and then enacted and all the rest of it. That has been, the paper's been released to the public with 1 month before it's going to be put to the Parliament. So very much trying to jam it through, very much trying to rush it through. And it's very much, I suppose, ambiguous. No one really knows what's going on. It's not the paper they were expecting. There's other things they're hoping for. They're looking for submissions, and there's the political and the legal process that are sort of in a mess, trying to make sense of things on that sort of score. There has been, I've heard from very reputable sources that the West Australian Labor Party, at least, which is the party that's in power at the moment, and one of the issues we have is that they have a vast majority in both the upper and lower house, so they're pretty much able to push things through, and there's a lot more happening than that with that than is ideal. But they have the thought that putting through new regulations which are far more restrictive on firearms, things like limiting the amount of numbers of firearms that firearms can have and bring it down to small numbers. There's all sorts of other things hidden inside what they're sort of suggesting, but that restriction will be a votes winner. So in 2025, when we go back to the polls, they are presuming that if they do enough against the legal firearms of owners of Western Australia, that will be a tick for them and help them get back into the office. It's part of the process here. The other part of the process is there is that side of the party. There is that side of, well, actually all governments, let's not just go with one of them, all of the major parties, there is sides of them that are on side with the bigger world picture, which is disarming the population. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's not a thought of what might be or might not be. That's the real stuff, that there is paperwork on that there is an agenda down that road of disarming the population, as there is all over the Western world, disarming the population. So with all those things in mind, the process of going forward there, I suppose I can tell you I am hearing more and more murmurings and rumours, or not rumours, talking about people, the actual people on the ground, the firearms owners, legal, upstanding citizens that have been pressured for lots and lots of years to feel like the bad guy by both a government sympathetic media, which are very much using every firearms incidents of any form, it'll be in the paper. All the other incidents that happen that don't matter politically, it won't be, of a far more dramatic nature. but of a firearms incident, then it's instantly in the paper. There's a lot of propaganda, 50 years of propaganda, I suppose, is what firearms owners have had to deal with against us, against them. So nervous about what to do, nervous about what to go, but really looking at like this is a very important thing to stand up and resist in some form or other. Very complicated and not, it might be easy to think that you can just go and do it, but the likes of protests, the likes of marches and things like that that have been done to try and do the right thing, it only takes a tiny bit of a twist from the media to turn that into a real negative rather than a positive. So there's a lot of apprehension about that, but also there's a lot of understanding that, you know, if you don't do anything, then, you know, you're as responsible as the rest of them. Even just being quiet and letting the authoritarian regime, which is what it seems to be growing into, take over. We're really moving into what appears more to be a ruling class and the people, and they're on opposite sides of the fence. And it isn't there yet, and it would so much be better to not get to that place, that we could have proper consultation, proper talking about things, looking at things as what they are, not the propaganda side of things, not the whether it's going to get your votes into government, that sort of things. Much more about the right and wrong would be great. The other side of things which is being spoken about is as firearms owners, we're definitely in the crosshair. If there's, like I said, in the paper, there's press releases about, there's all sorts of stuff that's very much there. What's not so obvious is lots of other recreational groups are in the same sort of problem. They have also at the moment it's the Labor Party, but a government that has a vast majority in government, so are making decisions which move into, there's things that maybe people don't know, but the likes of four-wheel driving, the likes of some of the car enthusiast sort of things, so some of the racing side of things, that sort of stuff, the fisheries, the fishermen, there's parts of our world, even parts of beaches and national parks and things that people could go are being shut off to the normal public. This is a little bit to do with the historical land. There's a little bit to do with rights in the way of, and to do with cultural rights and things like that. Even some of the big mining companies, I heard recently, offshore mining companies are getting to the point where they're starting to shut down around Australia because of political problems that is actually happening here. I would sort of, for this conversation, focus on our recreation and our free West Aussie spirit, and what is supposed to be the really good part of what it is to live in Western Australia is being seriously eroded by decisions like this. I would be suggesting that even the likes of the people who are happily playing golf on their lovely plush green golf courses in the middle of in the middle of the city, in the middle of the areas that are really nice there, that there is going to be this sort of decision making will take them away. They can win votes out of dealing with the housing crisis, and there's corporations and developers that'll make a lot of money out of putting houses on those places you like to play golf. This is something that is a big problem that is, if it goes the way it's going, if it keeps going there, where we move more and more into authoritarianism, whether you call it socialism, whether you call it whatever, and it's not just one side of the fence we're talking about here, one side of one political party. There is less and more on the political parties as to how far they go down that road. But this is more the nature of, I don't know if you call it the swamp, I don't know what you call it, but the nature of our civil servants, of our people, that side of our world turning into the ruling class and making decisions for us. So I'm glad to hear that there's people talking about working out ways to very, very carefully, but to, whether you call it protest, whether you call it a rally, whether you call it a march, whether you call it I don't know, a picnic in the park, whatever you call it, but to stand there in large numbers and to be counted as to, no, it's not okay that you want to make decisions for us. You are our civil servants. We want to be able to respect you, but we need you to respect us. And that's a very important part of democracy. And if we want to keep a democracy, if we want to keep this world we've got, then we're supposed to have differences of opinion. We're supposed to be able to talk about it. We're supposed to be able to find the right resolution for everyone to go forward. At the moment, it doesn't seem to be going that way. And that's not just a little look at Western Australia, that's a look all over our world. As for another bit I'll put into what is definitely come as a very clear message, is that what's happening for firearms, at least in Western Australia, is being used by police forces and the political side of it that has that agenda around Australia to see how it goes. Really a test case to see what happens in Western Australia, to how much they're going to take that to the other states. So there is something that, listen, I'm sort of hearing the right things from people. Like I said, I'm not part of this, although, you know, if there is something to do that, then me and Sam will put our faces in that place where we're not trying to and can't be too political in any sense if we want to stay alive as a channel, and that is a real concern. But still, I don't want to shy away from that either. But the fact that there is that sort of talk, the fact that clubs are starting to have these conversations, individuals are starting to have these conversations, and I suppose it comes to the point of the last time, beginning of the year, there was only a very small percentage of people that are affected by the gun ban. We were some of them, but most people did what people do in the Western world and in our world, and that is, oh, it's not really affecting me, so I don't have to worry about it. We knew, we said, this is going to be about everything else. Now, with what they're up to, it does affect a lot more people. So as negative as that is, there's a positive to that too. The more people it affect, and my thoughts, the more that the other people, whether it's the fisheries, or whether the four-wheel drivers, or whether it's the golfers, or whatever it is, that you can see this is happening in your neck of the woods. Yeah, I certainly am of the opinion also that letting them know in the nicest and most decent way, the most pleasant way, but to let them know there's a lot of people that are really concerned about that. If nothing else, about those votes. If nothing else, at 2025, if you've done too much of this, then no, we don't want you doing this at all. But also to our general civil servants, the ones that are there all the time, the ones that stay there with when the political teams swap and they're still making these decisions. Well, no, it's not okay. We want to be able to respect you, but you need to respect us. Anyway, listen, that's enough of that little one there. That's where at the moment we're in the middle of a consultation paper, which is all about creating new legislation for a new set of regulations. So there's fairly big things happening. But no one really knows quite what's going on. It's very unclear, and it's very, let's say there's not a lot of information coming out about what's really actually happening on that sort of score. So there is some concerns, but there, like I said, there's some noises coming from the people on the ground, which is really great to hear, and I'd really like more to respect our firearms community in the way of being able to stand for something that really matters to them. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for checking in. We'll catch you next time.